All right, Julia Pels, welcome. Darkest Hour, how are you today?
Good. How are you? Thanks for
Having,
having me.
yeah, of course, having a little trouble getting it together. I just chalk it up to, women shit.
Getting it together. What's getting it together, Josh?
I don't know. I mean, we walked you through. We did a lot today. We walked you through a browser upgrade. We
It's
we
true.
got we got all your
It's a
audio
lot.
figured out. I mean, it's a real mark for women's empowerment today. It was funny. I was tweeting with someone. I was like, go figure, it's such an International Women's Day thing for us to be late because I have to walk you through software updates. And,
Right? I
and then
mean,
she replied, she was like, this is why we don't this is why we don't deserve a holiday. And I was like, this is why you guys make 72 cents on the dollar. Because nerds like me have to walk you guys through things like software upgrades.
but it's the truth. I
Yeah.
mean, that's the thing. There's nothing wrong with the truth. You know what I'm saying? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, of course. I mean, well, there is today, like nowadays, we live in a society where nobody likes the truth,
Well, that's
comfortable or
true.
uncomfortable. So
That's true.
you and
That's
I, you
that's
and I,
fair.
you and I sort of became like internet friends because we live in a world where nobody sort of likes the truth, and we've both had our sort of run-ins with that. How did we? Did I find? I think I found you because
You
I
did.
think
I remember.
another comedian friend of mine was like, "You should check this lady out. She's a comic and she has an interesting story like you do." And rather than like jump into all that, I mean, from in your own words, I mean, kind of walk us through your story. You've been an LA comic for a long time, right?
Yep. Since 2015. And I started, of course, doing bringer shows because who doesn't, and I was kind of a fish out of water being from Chicago, in such a bizarre place in general. Like I remember thinking, because in college, I was studying psychology, and I remember coming here and being like, so many people are so mentally ill.
Yeah.
And it was a real shock,
When you say that, like, and you say
yeah,
mentally ill, what's the one that's the
yeah.
most common that you felt like you encountered?
Well, if I had to pick one from the DSM-5, which is the diagnostic manual that, therapists and psychologists and psychiatrists use. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know. I feel like there's just a lot of, if I had to categorize, I would say cluster B, and definitely therapists would know cluster B. It's the personality disordered cluster. So the narcissists, the antisocials, the borderlines, the, schizotypal. I think there's a lot of cluster B situations running around Hollywood.
Yeah. Do you think that's sort of just a direct byproduct of the nature of what the town is about, right? Like, so people come here in a weird way. It's like, of course, if you just look at it from 30,000 feet, of course, those types of people should be here. Everyone that's here believes they're special and chosen and deserve to be a star. And so naturally you have to have, I often joke, like, the biggest thing that holds me back in my career is not having that mental illness, is not having that unquestionable faith in myself that, talent, or any of that doesn't matter, that I'm just some chosen person who's destined for greatness. I mean, I imagine that you kind of have to brush a little bit of that off and go, yeah, of course, the crazy people who think highly of themselves are here. That's what the town is about.
That's true. I do think that it's the town that breeds definitely crazy. I mean, when you think about it, like there's, the alcohol and the drug problems, especially in comedy, you have a lot of alcoholics, you have a lot of recovering alcoholics. I mean, if we're going to, again, kind of talk about it from a cultural, psychological standpoint, or even sociological standpoint, it's never been a healthy place to be.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not really like a place. And then to top it off, when it comes to Hollywood, I mean, that's a whole another, thing to unpack if we're talking about suitcases here. I mean, you've got the musicians, you've got huge Hollywood types with tons of money and access to everything. So I definitely think the culture plays into it. I think it's a lot of I think a lot of people are lost in general, and especially now. And I think that just breeds a loss of faith, a loss of hope, a loss of direction.
So how did that sort of become, I guess, how did you run into that in coming to Los Angeles from Chicago as a comic? Obviously, it sounds like you encountered it pretty quickly. And I can tell you on the bringer show circuit, like I'm sure we've done a lot of the same bringers with a lot of the same people over the years. And, you know, that's an interesting world in itself, right? Because it's a person essentially, it's very much like a pimp relationship. Like, this is a person who, listen, I got this venue to let me produce a comedy show here. And what I want you to do is, if you want to perform, you're going to sell all the tickets for me and I'm going to keep 100% of the money. And it's like, what the fuck is that? Like, I've run into that issue. So, like, I could understand, like, I got the venue and so we're going to share the money, like that. I understand in some regard, but this idea that these bringer bookers have this mentality of like, I'm going to keep all of the fucking money. And not only that, but I'm going to slap you up, figuratively speaking, of course, because that's never happened physically, but I'm going to smack you up if you don't do your job and bring in enough people. It's like the fucking audacity of some of these people blows my mind.
It was a lot. And it got to the point where I just started I was doing so many independent shows that I told him to stop. I said, stop contacting me. I said, I'm getting booked and, you know, you weren't really paying me or paying me enough. And,
yeah, I mean,
they're paying me more in pizza, you know what I mean?
Of course, yeah, or free drinks or whatever.
Right,
or,
and there's not that pressure of like, you better have your 10 friends here or you're not getting 10 minutes. I mean, it's, you know, I didn't do it. I'll tell you, I think honestly, Josh, I think I did 2 bringer shows and I was done.
Yeah,
that was it.
I did way more than that for sure. You know, and oftentimes I would have friends come out, but it was like, it's a very weird dynamic. And I don't know if you ever found yourself in this situation where like you have a friend come out, they buy a ticket, which by the way is an insanely priced ticket for the quality of show that they're getting. Like I remember having a conversation with Tammy Joe one time and I was like, Tammy, the fucking main room show at the store is $15 and you're charging $20 for open mic level new comedians. Like my friends will come support me, but the show is not a $20 show. So they'll never do it again. Like you can charge 20, but you better have all people that are either really good and unknown or all people that have been on television or are at that level, because if for every legit comedian she would have 4 actors with somewhat of a social media presence because she thought they would draw, and they don't have fucking 3 minutes, let alone 10. And so you got somebody up there fucking around for 10 minutes and people just get tired and they get bored. And it's like, it becomes torture. And it just got to a point where I was like, listen, there's only one bringer booker I work with in LA. He's a buddy of mine, which is TK. And the only reason I work with TK is because you have to be funny to do his shows. Like he doesn't just book people who can bring people. If they absolutely fucking suck, he won't put them on the show. And it's like, that's the thing that's really strange for me. But I've also had, guys, I went toe to toe with another bringer booker in LA, a dude named Brian Monarch. I went back and forth with him super hard a few years back, and I basically just called him a pimp because he had booked me on a show, and it was like the day of I was supposed to do like 10 minutes or something, and the day of the show he's like, I'm gonna cut you down to below 5 minutes because nobody's bought tickets yet in advance. And I go, using my promo code, and I was like, Brian, it's Los Angeles. Who the fuck is buying tickets in advance for any like show that isn't Joe Rogan, Whitney Cummings, Chris D'Elia? I was like, I know I got people coming out. They're coordinating getting to the venue with me. They're just going to buy their tickets there. And he's like, oh, well, I don't understand why they wouldn't want to save the $5. And I'm like, dude, because parking is 30, drinks are 50. You think anybody gives a fuck about the $5 difference in the ticket price?
Unbelievable. Like, can I be honest?
You're out of your mind, dude.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
And I was also like, dude, I've got 2 albums out. I'm not going to ask any of my friends to pay to come see me do 5 minutes anywhere. So take me off your lineup.
Yeah, that's insane.
And by the way, I don't do 5 minute spots anywhere.
That's
anywhere.
5 minutes.
It's like I'm 14 years in as a stand-up. I've released 2 albums. I had my own television show. I'm not doing 5 minutes anywhere.
I would have loved to see your show.
Yeah.
I'm sad I didn't get to see it. Well, but that's okay. Well, now, I just follow you now. So
yeah,
it's cool.
It's kind of the same thing. If we ever go to lunch and you get the horrible displeasure of watching me eat in person, that's all the show you'll ever need.
I've been waiting to ask you out.
But yeah, so anyway, you get into the comedy scene, and at some point you start dating another comedian, right? This is where the story kind of goes.
Well, she's not, she calls herself a comedian. She's not a comedian.
Okay.
I mean,
sounds like a female comedian to me, but
in
go
my
on.
humblest of opinions.
Okay.
She was a storyteller. And I didn't date her under the guise of like, "Oh, you're a storyteller." I don't usually, shit where I eat. Let's be honest here.
Smart. That's a smart move, generally speaking.
But I wasn't really doing stand up. I originally had moved here. I was a theater kid. I was a Chicago theater kid, musical ballerina, modeled starting at age 3. Still had been in the industry.
Were you a toddler in tiara?
No, my father was very against commercial modeling, acting, any of it. He allowed me to do it for like independent, because he's a photographer himself.
Oh, okay.
So independent like photographers that would pay to photograph me in fake weddings. As like the little whatever flower girl.
So it was always sort of stuff that was almost sort of like not editorial, but
kind of.
Yeah. Okay. Editorial. I don't know. The phrase.
Sort of like, it would be fake weddings. It would be, more lifestyle. It wasn't like, there was one when I was really little. I couldn't have been older than 2 or 3. And I won an award. It was just me in a little ballet outfit. It's a little bowl cut. It was pretty though. And it was they named it Sugar Plum Fairy and entered it into some competition. So I had been used to being given direction and hair and makeup and all that. I've been been used to it, and it didn't bother me. I was the kind of kid who was very calm and kind of quiet and grounded. My mom was like, you just entertained yourself. Like you had patience and you loved being there. You weren't crying like, oh, I just want to go home. She said you loved it and they loved photographing you and all that. And so I just continued to do it. And then I got into ballet and then theater and musical theater. So coming to LA, I was looking primarily to do TV and film at first. Mm-hmm. When I realized that I felt like such a fish out of water. I didn't have great headshots. I had a weird resume for LA, I felt ill-equipped. And I was like, what can I do? I remember thinking in my mind, like, what can I do to stand out? Right. Like, I just felt as though, younger at the time when I moved here, not that I'm old, but younger, blondes, there's so many of us. Like, what am I going to do? So I took some time off. Like I took a year and just I worked hard to live in not such a crappy, scary neighborhood with gunshots, cause I wasn't used to that. I grew up in a relatively affluent yet diverse place, but so I had moved into a decent neighborhood. And then I thought, you know what, I'm going to try stand up. And so I started the stand-up. I met my ex, who we were talking about earlier, about a year in to the stand-up. Mm-hmm. And then we started dating. Again, she was more of a storyteller and an improviser. So we didn't exactly run in the same circles.
Sure.
But there was a group. It was a Facebook group. That was an all-female Facebook group, and I got invited into this group, and she was in the group, and I didn't like this group from the very beginning. And it's interesting.
Is this one of like the all-women comedy groups in
Yes.
LA? Okay.
Yes. And I remember seeing things in this group, like, and this is an important part of the story because this group is woven into it. And I'm going to give you the shortened version because, we don't want to be here all week. We don't.
No, but I think it's interesting, and I'll put this disclaimer out there for anybody who's watching now, so they kind of know a little bit of where the story is going. But like a lot of times, we talk about sort of like on my other show on the Wake Up Call, More Than the Darkest Hour, we talk about how very much how like progressive things end up eating themselves. And this group, which for people who aren't in the LA comedy scene, don't know this group. But it's a Facebook group that was essentially, I think, created with a good intent, right? The intention originally was,
I think
like,
so.
Let's give female comics a place to network and have sort of a safe space away from male bookers so they can actually talk candidly about some of the male bookers. Because as we know, in Hollywood forever, there's been fucking creeps at the helm for a long, long time. And so on the surface, it makes total sense to have a place where female comedians can get together and go, hey, you know, stay away from this casting director, stay away from this comedy booker, don't go on the road with this guy because this guy might try to fuck you. Those types of things, which makes sense. But it's interesting how quickly, when groups of people that traditionally have been marginalized come together, how quickly they go, wait a minute, there's power in this group now, and how can we now become oppressive in the environment ourselves? How can we now control things or manipulate things or influence things? And so when we started talking about your story, I was like, man, this is like that classic case of something that started from a good place that got completely co-opted and is now serving a really shitty purpose.
Yeah. I mean, I remember seeing things take place in that group before anything negatively happened to me. And I would get viscerally uncomfortable and think I need to leave this group. And then it got to a point where I was afraid to leave the group, literally, because I thought I was too afraid to put it in my stand-up. I was encouraged, like, oh, you should joke about this. This is so funny. I mean, I think I was well received for a long time with this independent crowd of, it's primarily women.
Yeah.
I don't really get much hate from men, but then again, my comedy is, I think guys understand it. I think men are more likely to understand where I'm coming from with what I talk about in terms of sexuality, not being gay, but I talk a lot about having sex with women and things that go along with that. I talk a lot of relational things and psychological and emotional and cultural things about women that men understand very deeply, that I don't think women always find funny because they don't necessarily want to admit that it's true.
Yeah, sure. I mean, and that, to me, that makes logical sense, that women that have sex with women would have things in common with men that also have sex with women. Like, there should be, theoretically, there should be some shared experience there, right?
I think a logical person would agree. Yeah. I don't think our experience is going to be the same. I mean, obviously, we're coming at it from a different lens. You're a man. You're a male. I'm a female. You know what I mean? I know there's a lot of things that are swirling and
you
whirling.
Might, for instance, like women. I do not. No.
Right.
I detest them. No.
I do not.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's a lot of fluidity. You know,
sure,
there's a lot of especially with people's, I guess, people say gender as if it's your biological sex. Those are two separate things.
Sure. One is what you are. The other is how you present yourself. It's
right.
Simple,
and and people like to put them together and make them what they're, so it's as a lesbian, as a female, I have a lot in common with men and or males because we have so many shared experiences that are either annoying, funny, in common, some shopping story, some yelling story, some behavioral story. It's enjoyable. And I've always had a very grounded and close relationship with my father.
Well, that to me, it's so interesting that you bring that up, because that to me in my life has always determined, with maybe one exception, but it has always determined which women I can fuck with and which ones I can't. Every healthy relationship I've ever had with a woman has been somebody who's had a good relationship with her father.
Yeah.
And all of my female friends are women who have had good relationships with their fathers. And all of my gay female friends that I can tolerate, that we get along and we have similar sense of humor, similar sensibilities, they all have great relationships with their fathers. So it's interesting that you say that, because it just further validates this feeling that I have that generally, for the most part, women who have, good relationships with their fathers are just much different to deal with than ones.
Yeah, we're different people. We're different.
Yeah.
We still might be technologically disabled.
Yes. Yeah. Well, unless your dad's Bill Gates, I understand.
Right. I mean, right. But I mean, I really appreciate, and my mom was the one who was, I mean, really with us in junior high, for me, junior high and high school, because my dad was a publisher, a very successful publisher of a magazine and flying all around and doing amazing things. But my father and I had always, as a child, we always had a good relationship. I'm sorry I strayed off about the thing, but I thought it was an important thing to bring up that we really, have always, and it's a little Freudian, but you know what, again, I'm always looking at things kind of from a psychological, social perspective. And it's like,
it's also more interesting to me because in a way it does defeat the man-hating lesbian stereotype that like, oh, this woman hates her father and therefore she hates men and that's why she's gay. It's like that immediately, that argument gets completely defeated when, it's someone like you who has a great relationship with their father.
Yeah, and I love men. And it's even on my website. It's like, Julia's a man-loving lesbian. And people are like, she's a what? Like they can't, they're like, sorry about the volume. I should have turned it. But they're it's a very confusing. They're like, she's
Concept.
Really bad.
Yeah,
it's like an anomaly and they're trying to figure it out in their head. They're like, wait, is she just bisexual and she can't? And it's like, no, I just genuinely enjoy the company of men more. I can't wait for all the women to lose their minds and be like, what a fucking crazy bitch, I hate her. But it's just the thing about it is I react better. When we're chemically charged, right? And when we're near different people, we feel their energy, or at least I can feel people's energy. And when I'm around a bunch of neurotic women, it makes me more neurotic. Yeah. When I'm with someone who's like, press the chrome button, right? Like, drop the shit down, like a very logical, very male, very get it the fuck done kind of way, then I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Right? Like I'm in the zone.
I was literally just like, listen, FaceTime me and point my camera at your computer and I will tell you what to do.
But like, that's what women need. Like, I don't want to speak for all women, but for me, like, I don't want someone who's going to either like sugarcoat it or be too mean. Like, you just got to be direct, okay, do the FaceTime now, turn it around. Can't see the computer. Like, for me, I just need direct.
Right.
And men are direct.
Yeah. Some because it's actually pivoted now where I think some men have sort of capitulated a little bit to what they think women want. And they have completely like cucked, pussified themselves. Now some men are worse than the worst lesbians.
I 100% agree. And I don't even think it's the lesbians who are the worst. I actually think it's the straight women.
Yeah, the beta. Well, you got to be specific about, because it's not necessarily all straight white males. But I think
no, women. It's the straight women. No, it's straight women are so angry, so angry. Not all. But there's a group. I mean, and this is the group that I'm talking about.
Going back to the Facebook thing.
Let's go back to the Facebook thing, because these women were not lesbians. I'll tell you something right now.
Speaking on behalf of all men, are you sure? No, I'm just kidding.
I'm sure.
Yeah, maybe they should.
Definitely. Be. I feel like lesbians are actually cooler with guys than straight women are. Yeah. When you do the research. Like, if you actually go into the field. I don't mean
one of the
become friends with one of us.
Yeah, well, one of the, I'll tell you this, when I first started stand-up, I was in Minneapolis, and I used to do this open mic in Coon Rapids, Minnesota. Not a real woke name for a city, by the way.
Coon Rapids, I like it. I'm down. Yeah.
And so, but one of the comics, she didn't do any other rooms than this bar in Coon Rapids, and she was a black woman named TT. And she was like a male presenting lesbian. And when I say male presenting, like dressed male, spoke male, didn't necessarily use male pronouns because it honestly didn't matter, but like literally didn't just use a strap on for sex, walked around with a prosthetic penis.
Oh yeah. Like packing.
Yeah, always. Yeah. And by the way, the fucking funniest sense of humor absolutely could be made fun of. Absolutely, like completely like armadillo skin, no crisis of identity. If we gave her shit for who she was, she would laugh it off and be like, yeah, we're all busting each other's balls. Mine just happened to be latex. Like,
I love that. I love that. That's great.
And it was like, so it was interesting when people talk about like, you know, I get into this debate with people all the time on social media about this concept of what is punching up and what is punching down. And it's like, in my mind, my experience of making fun of trans people has never felt like punching down, because I've always viewed them as equals. I've always viewed black people as equals. I've always viewed gay people as equals.
Yeah.
So I will fuck with them and make fun of them like an equal.
Right.
And when you start to like decide, well, I can't make fun of these people, essentially you're saying I can't make fun of this group of people because I feel they're beneath me. That makes you a shitty person.
Yeah, I think it's very bizarre.
It's a very
really, I've never, I mean, people are, you know, again, from the psychological perspective, they're inherently tribal, but they're not inherently racist. Just like systemic racism or systemic shit has dissipated, but there's individual racism or individual sexism or individual. And then what we do is say, well, it's systemic. It's everybody. It's this. No, it's not.
Yeah.
No, it's not. Stop.
I
It's
agree.
just not. And I don't care if they hate me. I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care. I just don't.
So staying on task, it started for you in this Facebook group in the LA comedy scene.
Well, no, it didn't.
Entirely okay.
I mean, what it started with was, well, kind of. So it was on Facebook. So in 2018, I decided to give a little pushback. Okay, we'll start there, because I saw everyone in my group of whatever, a couple hundred women, or the Facebook group, for example, or the women I was hanging around with. Because obviously there's a bazillion comedians, right? This isn't the entire LA comedy scene that thinks or believes, or, you know, this is just a certain group that I happen to fall in with. It was a group of indie comedians that were very like, we're open-minded, we're diverse, like we're welcoming, come join us. That was the Facebook group. That was that was the sales pitch, essentially. Yeah. Exactly. You got it. And my ex happened to be not ex, my ex now, but not at the time. She was in it, but we weren't in it when we weren't together. We were in it after we had already been involved. So I started dating her, and I actually broke up with her. I asked for no contact. I blocked her email. I blocked her phone. I said, if you see me out in public, please just walk away. Don't acknowledge me. There was no blowout fight. There was no screaming. There was none of that. I just said, look, we kind of are in the same community. I'd like to keep it peaceful and quiet. Please do that. She did not. I'd see her out and she would get in my face. She'd corner me in bathroom, like just do dumb shit. I ignored it. Finally, this is where we're getting to the Facebook post. In October of 2018, I'm watching everybody run their mouth about all men are rapists. All men are bastards. All men, all men, all men. Women are great. Women power. Men, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, this is a lie. This is a lie. And I'm done with the lies. So I'm going to tell. And I do want to say this. So I wrote a Me Too post on my Facebook about my ex that I just talked about, that I broke up with in March 2018. I have the email. If anybody wants to read it. I love how people just don't believe facts. But anyway,
you shared a story about, an interaction with you and your ex that sort of was intended, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but was it intended to sort of say that this isn't a male only thing?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
A million. I can't emphasize that enough. The whole, exactly. All of it isn't, abuse doesn't know gender. People need to, abuse, let me just yell it for the people in the back. Here, let me roll up my sleeves and just let everybody see that abuse doesn't know gender. It's not about a penis. It's not about a man's brain. Abuse is about power. It's about control. It's about manipulation. It's about being mentally ill for the person who's doing it.
Well, what was a real interesting discovery for me in sort of one of the very quietly discussed parts of the Me Too movement was that it doesn't get talked about how common domestic violence is in same-sex female couples. Like, I was shocked to see.
We're in the number one bracket. We're in the number one bracket, meaning we're above straight couples. We fight domestically and get domestic violence. Sorry to jump in, but this makes me crazy that no one knows this. Lesbians are in the number one bracket. It's like lesbians, and I think it's gay men, then I think it's hetero, and then I think it's bisexual. I think the bisexuals are the chill.
And I can share this, and I can share this story. I think I shared it on my podcast before, but some of it is, I think, because the rest of us don't have the same reaction to it that we do with male-female violence. And I'll share my own experience. When I was Uber driving many years ago, I was driving two gay guys, one very masculine, one very flamboyant, and they were arguing in the backseat of my car. And they were Latino, so it was even funnier because the accents helped sort of play to the story a little bit. And the one guy was like, you be in a fucking beach and you don't know when to shut up and you making me look stupid and like I hate you. And he's like, and the other guy is like, you don't tell me to shut up. You don't tell me to shut up. You tell me the masculine guy is like, you tell me to shut up, I'm going to fuck you up. And he's like, bitch, shut up. I'll tell you to shut up. He's like, I don't even care. Shut up. No. And I'm just driving the Uber and I'm going like, dude, he's telling you to shut the fuck up. Like I would shut up.
Like, please.
I was like, please shut up. I don't want to have to drive to the police station today. Please just shut up. And oh
my God.
And it was weird because like he kept fucking antagonizing the feminine gay guy. Yeah. And then the dude belted him across the car. and in my mind, my reaction wasn't, oh my God, this is domestic violence. I need to drive these guys to the police and report this. My initial reaction was, he fucking told you to shut up. It was like, I didn't see it as masculine, feminine. I saw it as two men fighting, which I have no problem with. And so part of the reason I bring this story up is, and I even had this like weird existential, like all day discussion with myself of like, is that wrong of me? That like, what does that say about me that I allow the fact that their gender is the same to dismiss the violence and not think anything of it? And then I started asking bigger questions of like, oh my God, is that what we do with black on black crime? Do we not think anything of it as white people or anyone else sort of peripheral to that of going, well, that's just two black people fighting each other. That has nothing to do with me. And it's kind of weird how we do build so much of the sociological structure of what is acceptable and not acceptable off of things like gender, rather than off of, is this a much bigger man fucking up a much smaller, petite man? And should I have as much a problem with that as I would if it were a man and a woman? And listen, it's not for me to say what's right or not. I can just tell you that I recognize that there was a distinct difference in myself, that one, I had almost no reaction to other than should have kept your fucking mouth shut, versus if it were a woman, and that has happened when I was driving Uber before, where I've had men and women get in those situations and I jump in right away. I get involved right away. I establish that there will be consequences right away. And so, you know, I can't say, I don't feel bad about it, but I am curious about like what that says about us as human beings, where one I have no problem with and the other one I definitely have a problem with.
Well, I think it's more, again, I'm coming from it from a psychological lens. I don't think it's us as human beings. I think it's more what we have learned, what we've been taught in schools, you know, what's been emphasized, what's been played down, what's been hidden, what's been brought to light. I don't think it says anything about you if you want my psychoanalysis, which you didn't ask for. I think your thoughts are unfortunately pretty normal.
But here's the problem with the society we live in today. If I would have jumped on social media and been like, this happened and here's how I feel about it, and I don't know how to feel about it, I would have gotten demolished. I would have gotten demolished. So it's like we live in a society today to where a guy like me can't even like discuss that in a public setting without risk of being crucified.
Correct.
You know what I mean? Like I can't even have that conversation. I couldn't even go on Twitter. Like I was totally fine watching one gay man beat up another gay man earlier today. And if the gay man who got his ass kicked was a woman, I would have had a problem with it. Like, what do you guys think about that? I would have gotten crucified. Like I would have been, you know, that would have been my first canceling, because that happened like in 2016 or something.
Yeah, so. It would have. Yeah. Well, because here's the thing. We live in a society, Josh, where we can't talk about, we can't ask questions. So, you know, like my friends will call me and go, hey, is this all right to write, like, you know, from a lesbian perspective? And I always think of course, my battery's dying here, but I always think to myself, like, why are you deeming me as the lesbian perspective? I'm just a person. Like, I don't know. I mean, I always give them the thumbs up. They're like, is this offensive? I'm always like, do it. I don't know. It's not offensive to me. But, you know, it takes a lot to offend me because I do know who I am, and I'm pretty psychologically sound, which I know is scary for a lot of people. But
so in this group, you share this story.
Well, actually, it was on my private Facebook page.
Oh, okay,
it wasn't even in the group.
Okay.
So in 2018, I just decided to write a Me Too post. It wasn't graphic. It was actually if you read the post, it's very political in nature. It challenges the feminists. Mm-hmm. It challenged the dynamic of believe all women. It challenged the narrative that, you know, yes, all men. It challenged a lot. And it was probably infuriating to a lot of women in that group. The progressive, you know, forward thinking, whatever they want to call themselves.
And what was the first shoe to drop?
Like when that happened?
Well, no, once you put that post up, like, what was the first shoe to drop where it started to become like a cancellation for you?
Well, at first everything was, I believe you, I love you, we're great, right?
Uh-huh.
So
publicly, sure.
I believe you, blah, 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 blah. So then the first thing that negatively went wrong was I was on stage. You're going to appreciate this story. I was on stage doing my routine, which is me talking about how women are mentally ill. I mean, sometimes. And I got served I think it was at the Comedy Store on stage by one of her friends. Like, she did it on purpose to try to freak me out. And instead of it freaking me out, I just used it, and the crowd loved it.
So you got served actual papers.
I got served a temporary domestic violence restraining order. Domestic violence restraining order. Mm-hmm. Yes. Her and I had not, let me just say this out loud for people who don't read. We had not spoken to each other, been in contact with each other. Like, we had crossed paths. Shows
and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, but not even in the same room. Like, really, we did not see each other for, I'd say, about 3 years when I wrote this post. So I was thinking in my head, the worst that can happen is she can civilly try to sue me, but I have evidence that she was abusive. So if it's true, she can't sue me.
You're right.
But that's not what she did.
It's not slander if it's true.
Right. And it was true. And so I, in my head, because I even checked with some attorney friends, I was like, hey, I'm going to write this post. I did. I didn't just impulsively write it. I, in fact, Josh, wrote it and deleted it like 5 times because, you know what?
What a woman thing to do, by the way.
Whatever. Yeah. The point is, I agree with you. The point is, though, is, you know, I would say now, I mean, if I was to do it over, I don't regret it, but I don't think that's the right way to do it. I think it's just the way everyone was doing it. And I was so mad at the narrative that I was hell bent on telling the other side. So,
well, you know, you go when you're trying to rally against the narrative, you know, and this is the argument I make when people go, if you don't like Twitter, just make your own Twitter. And it's like, well, this is the town square that this conversation is happening in.
Right.
So I want to have this conversation here where people are already having it. I want to be a dissenting voice where the conversation is taking place. I don't want to go start a new conversation in a vacuum. That's not what opposition thinking is. That's just creating a cult to fight another cult. That's how religious crusades happen, is when those ideas have to live separately until they decide to murder each other. So, you know, I don't put any stock in the idea of that was the inappropriate way to do it, because you're going to the town square, so to speak, and saying, I have a story that doesn't fit this narrative.
I'm just not one. I just want to convey to anyone who's watching, and even to you, since this is our first meeting, that I'm not one. In fact, I'm actually really private in general. And I'm not one to, you know, I don't believe in ruining people's lives. I don't believe in airing your dirty laundry. But you're right. The town hall was having a discussion, and I felt as though I'd kept my mouth shut. I've always been the good girl. If you read other interviews about me, I talk about growing up in a small town. I talk about being a ballerina and always very petite and, you know, attractive as people deem me, which I still see myself like a 12-year-old in overalls, but whatever. If y'all want to see me as hot, great. Use my booty. I'm good with it. You know, whatever. I'm fine. I just think it's funny because people see you in this light and they judge you when they just don't even know who you are. And I think it's interesting. So I did the Me Too post. So I went to the town hall. I did the Me Too post. Everyone believes me. Then I'm on stage doing jokes, my typical Julia jokes. I'm trying to think. I think it was the Belly Room at the Comedy Store. And my girlfriend at the time was with me. I'm such an abuser, you know. I had my girlfriend at the time. Totally different. I had dated like 3 or 4 girls that would love to, you know, get up and be like, Julia's a really nice person. You know, most girls you interview, like she asks too much in bed if I'm okay. It's annoying. We just want her to shut up. You know, I'm kind of that girl. So
sure.
So I get the order and I just like took it. And I mean, you know, I don't mind saying this now, but sure, inside it felt like I was on fire. Not because I was being served, but because I had no idea what I was being served with or why. Sure. Because I had done nothing illegal. I had done nothing wrong. I had nothing to get papers served on. Again, if it was a civil suit, I wouldn't have been as surprised because I would have been like, well, yeah, okay, maybe she's going to try.
Yeah. But, and I will, I'm going to drop the link for the legal side of this into the chat so that people can look at this if they want.
Eugene Volk, you know, is a very prestigious law professor.
Yes.
You know, he's he's like one of those kid geniuses. And our case was actually not made case law until he requested it from the appeals court. He specifically wrote them because my attorney called me when he did. And he said, there's a lot of cases when we talk about free speech and when, you know, Aaron Kaplan and him, you know, Aaron Kaplan's from the other, and they work a lot. They work very closely. And him and Aaron both reached out to the courts and said, we want this case published. This is intense. And this is, you know, they didn't use the word intense, but they wanted it published. I actually sent an email to Eugene thanking him. And, you know, he said, you're welcome. And I'm glad you're okay and all this stuff. And, you know, it's honestly, as hard as it was,
Yeah, I have it linked here where people can take a look at it.
Yeah, it's a great article.
Reason.com, the article's in there, but essentially, you know, I didn't want to jump into this too much to skip ahead, but I just wanted to share it with people so that they could, you know, I think it's important check it out and read it sort of more in detail. But so at that point it becomes litigious, right? You've been served with papers.
I've been served with papers.
Now there's a restraining order, and I think the other thing that's kind of very malicious, it was almost immediate. And again, I'm just kind of piecing together from what I've read.
It was immediate.
It was almost immediate that she started back channeling the comedy scene and saying, "Hey, I have this restraining order." Sort of like, let's not even see how the courts decide on this. Just so you know, this has been legal action taken, and so Julia should be shut down from everything.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Which is kind of what you're seeing with people like Chris D'Elia. It's like we're not even waiting to see if the guy is innocent or if he's even going to be charged with an actual crime. Everyone's just going like, shut him down. His agents dropped him. Everybody dropped him. You know, it's sort of like this really guilty till proven innocent thing. And even then, it's almost like, let's say D'Elia comes out and proves his innocence. Look at Chris Hardwick as an example. Chris Hardwick came out with the receipts, completely proved his innocence, and in a lot of ways is still persona non grata in the Hollywood industry, in the comedy scene. Yeah. Like, it's almost like no matter how
they don't care.
It's like, even if you prove your innocence beyond a shadow of a doubt or win in court like you did and got a verdict overturned, it's almost
which is
like
so hard, you know that
it's
their narrative became, and I really want to share this with you because so let me tell you, and then I'll tell you, because their narrative is, they still don't believe that I won because I was right. They believe that my parents are wealthy people and hired fancy attorneys and got me off. And it's like, that palette works. Like, do you know anything about the law? Have you read about the court systems ever? Do you know?
The last thing a judge is, and it's like, that might have worked on the front end of a case or something, but
like what she did.
A judge is often not going to go back and say that they were wrong.
which is why when we did the not the appeal, but we did a motion to reconsider. We did a motion to reconsider. I went through a couple lawyers in this, and I also tried to get her served. Well, we'll get to it. But so I get served. I have to appear in court. So I call my parents, I call my friends who are attorneys, and everyone's like, did anything happen? I'm like, no. They're like, okay, well, then you're going to go to court and the judge is going to dismiss it. I'm like, are you sure? Do I need to get an attorney? They're like, no. All it says here is that there was a blow to the head in 2015, which sounds like she watched Ted Bundy's movie and literally took it from that. There was never a blow to the head. I don't beat people that I'm with. I've never been charged of anything. I've never been accused of anything. She only came out and did this after the Facebook post. It's ridiculous. Yeah. So, and then she contacted one of my exes. I did want to bring this up. She contacted an ex of mine who I also had to leave because she had, I believe, not just borderline personality disorder, but I believe that she was a sociopath. And, I take responsibility for being with people who are ill. I tend to be a caretaker. And when people are like, why would you date crazy? It's like, I'm sometimes.
Do you think you can help them? You think you can fix
sometimes
them?
Like I'm a little too compassionate. Sometimes I'm a little too naive. Like these are things that I'm working on, but I'm not ashamed to say that I've made mistakes by dating sick people. I can't shame myself for that. And I feel like they kind of want me to in a way, but
oh yeah.
So Jen reaches out to this. I don't care that I said her name. You can bleep it out if you need to, but
yeah. So she reaches. It's in the article too.
Right. So. I mean, it's there. And my lawyer's like, it's freedom of speech. So now I can talk about it. So Jen reaches out to this other woman in Washington, right? So Julia has two accusers. No, Julia does not. I have tons of receipts from doctors, therapists, and this woman who called me an abuser and said I was mentally unstable or whatever she wrote for Jen to bring to this judge of her being extremely abusive to me. And I literally moved from Washington State down to LA. And I have, like I said, receipts out and not texting, because you can fake text now. I've got emails to her doctor saying, I am abusive to this woman. Mm-hmm. Please help me. I'm borderline personality. Like I have all the receipts. So it's all there. So there was never any abuse. So that's cleared. But in my head, at this point, I've got to, like you said, I've got what they call as a temporary restraining order. So here I am. I start losing weight rapidly. I'm dating someone. I'm living with someone. Our relationship starts to get turbulent. She sees me not eating. I'm starting to not even be able to function at work.
This is the thing about like the racketeering aspect of a cancellation is because you feel it in everything you're doing, everywhere you go. It's like, what people don't understand is like, it lives on forever in everything you ever attempt to do. There's no climbing out of it. Like every time a company looks at my resume, every time a club looks at me as a potential person to book, they have to reconcile. And sometimes it boils down to like the fate of my career and livelihood and the partnerships I get to facilitate, the people I get to work with, oftentimes depends on how willing they are to read all of it and how much they're willing to look, because it's very easy for people to just to look at headlines and go, woman involved in domestic violence case, and they're just done. Yep. They just go, no, I'm out. I don't care about the context. I don't care who's right or wrong. I'll just move on to the next person who, by the way, has nothing about them ever written, which you could argue is worse in the world of entertainment and promotion, right? Would you rather have somebody who's controversial or somebody who's never said anything worth recording ever? Right. So
I can say that about somebody, but I won't.
Yeah. I mean, so, it's like, I didn't get into this fucking thing to be clean as a whistle and to be, lauded for how not rocking the boat I was, right. How acceptable. I didn't get into comedy to be an appropriate human being. Right. You know what I mean? And so this idea that like, that a fucking heroin addict who's never tweeted the wrong thing is a more viable employment option than me, who has some dicey opinions, let's say.
I agree with that.
So
100%. I just think that our society is backwards,
Well,
and again, it goes back to the mentally ill. I know people, use this word a lot, but again, I almost became a forensic psychologist, and there was a reason. I still like studying people like Bundy. Some people may think that that's odd. For me, it's calming because I'm using the left side of my brain. Women, we're always not always, but a lot, we're in our right. We're in our emotion mind. We're thinking, we're feeling, and so when I would study psychology and when I still study it independently, I listen to Jordan Peterson consistently. I haven't done his 12 steps to life or whatever, but I listen to him quite often. My father, I also listen to, and he's a big Jordan Peterson fan. I also just love podcasts about psychology. I will never lose my love for that, even though I didn't, become one. Yeah. I think that'll always be in me. And I think that's kind of how I always approach things, is from that kind of psychological lens. So we'll fast forward back to the story. So I start losing weight. I know this trial is coming up. I have to see a judge. I've never, had to really deal with this before. I'm freaking out. I'm going, I know I didn't do anything wrong, but am I going to be okay? So we get there, we get to the day, and she's there, and she's brought a friend, and she's shuffling her papers, and she looks insane. Oops, that's a judgmental word. I shouldn't use it. But she just did. And she looked angry. She looked like, why did you post this about me? Like, it made sense in my head, again, from a psychological perspective, that she just wanted to take it down. And that's exactly what she wrote in the order. When the judge asked her, he's like, look, if Miss Pels beat you in 2015 or whatever you're claiming, why am I hearing about this now? Right. And she literally says in the text, because of the Facebook post. And it's like, oh my God.
So I didn't think it was a problem until I decided it was a problem. It's sort of like this new world we live in where you can have this revisionist perspective of rape. Like, oh no, I consented in 2011 when it happened, but now in 2019, I don't think I consented. So it's now rape.
That's like, here, like, I gave you money, like you asked for $10, right? And so I said, sure, Josh, here's $10. And then a year later I said, he's a thief.
Yeah.
Well, exactly. No, you gave him the fucking $10. He's not a thief. You gave it to him. What the
Exactly. I
mean, I don't know if I said this before, but I've never been raped by a man. I've never, look, if a man touches me off, I'll twist his fucking hand or his dick and it'll be not a thing. I mean, I don't have a problem asserting myself with men. Right. I don't. And in fact, I go back to this. I enjoy the company, even, gnarly whiskey drinking, I'm down to hang. I love the way men think. I love the simplicity. I can spit hawkers and not get judged for it. We don't have to talk about shopping. I get it. I look extreme. People are like, but you're so girly. And it's like, yes, but we can still have fluidity. We can present femininely and feel certain energy on the inside. And we don't have to label it. We don't have to put pronouns on everything and figure out. It's just more divisive bullshit, excuse me, in my humblest of opinions.
No, I totally agree. I
feel like I'm on my TED Talk. Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay.
But anyway, so I go to the judge. We go to court, right? Because what am I going to do? So I go to court and I'm there in my suit and she's there and we're there and, we're there. And basically what the judge said, because, she presented the evidence, which was her word statement from an ex-girlfriend. Again, that's not evidentiary support. And, there was no evidence, not even a mean text from me. Like when we dated back, like, fuck you, bitch, nothing. Not an email, nothing. I mean, come on, produce something of a lie. There was nothing.
Yeah.
And so I said to the judge, and here's what I did wrong. My dad's like, you weren't a victim enough. This was a very democratic judge. He was not put into his position. At the time, he was a commissioner. And what a commissioner is, for anyone who doesn't know, I'll just tell you very quickly, he's not a judge. So when he made this judgment, he was not even a judge. A commissioner is a lawyer who's appointed to sit in for a judge when there are too many cases being had, and there's not enough judges to go around. So Blancart, that is his name, his last name. Blancart was a commissioner at the time. He was not a judge when he made this decision. I said to him, Your Honor, I know how to address people in court. I didn't say that, but I'm telling you. So I said, Your Honor, I understand, Miss Curcio is upset about the whatever. I was like, but this isn't support. I was like, this is the courts being manipulated by a mentally ill person. Is literally what I said. Mm-hmm. He didn't like that too much. And so then he's like, so you think I can be easily manipulated? And then it was like, his ego just took over.
So he sort of took what I'm sure was presented as like you gaslighting as an insult to his intelligence. Uh-huh. Right. Mm-hmm. So it was a double hit. If he's a very progressive person, he's thinking, not only are you gaslighting this woman, but you're calling me stupid in the process. Mm-hmm. Sure. I can see where that might have not worked in your benefit.
Sure. And I was just a little too smart for him. I mean, I think he couldn't figure out who was the bigger victim. We were both kind of the same size. I mean, I've always been smaller than her in terms of weight, but we're kind of the same height. We're both blondes. We're both white. Like, who's the bigger victim? They're both lesbians, right?
Yeah.
How does he decipher?
It's an oppression stalemate.
Well, what he should have done is followed the law.
Right. Which we all hope they do, but they don't often.
But he didn't. He didn't. And basically what he told me is that I needed to prove myself innocent. If anyone goes in and you want to read the case, that's what he said. He said, I said, Your Honor, look, I'm not a judge. I'm not a lawyer. I said, but I know the law. And he looked at me, and I'll never forget this moment. He said, and he kind of leaned in when he did it. You know how they can lean into their, and he goes, well, I am the law today. And I knew in that moment, a judge saying, I am the law today. If you want to talk about abuse,
you knew you were fucked at that point.
Nailed it. Exactly. Yeah. I knew that there was going to be a permanent restraining order against me. And I knew my career was fucked in that moment. I knew I know how sick she is. And I knew what she was going to do with that piece of paper, if that makes sense.
I've had moments like that in depositions. Like, none of my cases that I've fought have ever gone to the courtroom, but I've done a lot of depositions. Mm-hmm. And I've had moments like that in a deposition where I actually can recall the specific law better than the lawyer can, because the lawyers who have defended the people I've sued are employment law lawyers. They're not necessarily constitutional lawyers. They're not First Amendment lawyers. They're not free speech lawyers. They're also not civil rights lawyers, which you would think you kind of have to be in employment law. But what's so interesting is, with all of my years of sort of dealing with employment law from the corporate side, I actually knew a lot more about the civil rights side of employment law than a lot of employment lawyers know. And so there would be times where in a deposition, I would literally have opposing counsel try to draw up some sort of legality that didn't apply in the state we were talking about. And I was like, that's literally not the law in California. That the law in California is different than that. And I had to know that because I was hiring and firing people in California. That person was a lawyer from another state who didn't know that the law in California was different than where they were from in Chicago. So it was so interesting to me that, they literally, and in those moments, I could definitely feel, probably similar to what you felt, I could feel that I then became enemy number one of that lawyer. Forget about the case.
Yeah, I knew exactly. I was like, okay, he's the law today.
Yeah, this will not be your day today. So anyway, that case doesn't go your way. So I lose. So I get I shouldn't say I lose, right? Yeah. And it's not a criminal order. It is a civil order, but it is viewed, okay, by most people, employers. You can't buy a gun. If you ever want children, your spouse is always going to get them over you. It's viewed as violent. Because it's a domestic violence restraining order. It's an interesting way to circumvent the law, in that it's almost like receiving the consequences of a criminal conviction without a criminal trial and a jury.
Correct.
Yeah, it's like real litigious cancel culture in a way.
Yeah. It was well. At that point, I was scared to death, and I called my parents and said, here's what I did. Here's what happened. And, my parents are all about me taking responsibility. I come from a very good home, just in the sense of, it's never going to be one of those, like, not my kid,
Yeah, sure.
You see those and you're like, how did you not see that your son killed your daughter-in-law,
Yeah.
But, But
Remember
you
when he was
know,
twisting the head off of chickens in the coop when he was 4? Well, that should have been a sign.
right. Those Perry, you know, but
Right.
you know, I mean,
We just thought kids are weird with animals. Yeah, not that weird.
why was his head in a mason jar? Like,
Right.
But I mean, my mom was, I think, more afraid. My dad was more logical, like, okay, what can we do?
Right.
And that's when we hired a lawyer who was recommended by a friend. This wasn't my attorney for the appeal. This was just the motion to reconsider, which means you go to the judge and say, here's new evidence or more evidence. Please reconsider your decision, which no judge ever overturns it. But I did find out later that for the appeal process, it looks very good because you tried everything you could to turn it around.
Right.
So even though we didn't win that, so we did go in, which just means we went in and we had to see her again, which is annoying, but it is what it is. It's retaliation. Like people don't understand that retaliation is ugly. And when you tell the truth, sometimes people have this narrative of a retaliation, like a girl comes out about a rape and then the man comes back and beats her. That's not just the only retaliation. Women retaliate all the time. I don't know what narratives y'all keep playing in your minds, but if you look up the statistics and you do your research, you will find that women are just as violent and have, just as many issues and I don't mean in the same ways, but there's psychological manipulations and emotional manipulations and abuses. And we literally just have muted it out almost of our culture. It's like, it doesn't exist. Every woman is like a fairy princess on a boat drinking a margarita and they're fine. I don't get it. I don't understand it.
Right.
So my dad says, after we lost the motion to reconsider, we went through a few law firms. I tried to get a restraining order against her because she would not stop running her mouth. And I mean, it wasn't just, I didn't want to shut her up. I just wanted the chaos to stop and it wouldn't. She called, I was getting dropped from Facebook groups without, like, people were blocking me. I was getting letters from theaters. I mean, it's an indescribable word. I know that I'm sure there's a lot of men, that have felt this way, that have been like falsely accused of something for whatever reason the woman has behind it. It is very real. It does happen, and it doesn't matter why it happens. It does happen.
Well, I also don't think we do a good enough job of pointing out the fact that most of the actual mobilized forms of this cancel culture, it's fucking women. Mm-hmm. It's not men. It's not men calling your job. It's not men going to HR. It's not men. So when women talk about, like, we're tough, we can handle it, we want to be in the workplace, then stop fucking tattling to get your way all the time. Like, it's a perfect example. When I was canceled in 2018, right? I said a joke, or not.
Same year I was.
Yeah. So I made a tweet about race, basically highlighting how openly accepted it is to be racist towards white people in society today.
Is that what got you canceled?
Yeah, essentially, yeah. And it was, I said it in a hyperbolic way. I said straight white males become this century's N-word. And, it's interesting because the word is continuously used the same way. And the open, sort of chummy way that people are openly racist towards white people, specifically heterosexual white men, has only gone even further down the line than when I called it out in 2018.
Yep.
What's interesting then is, so what everybody said at the time was, well, if he thinks this, he's obviously racist. So then they went back and started doxing all of my old racial jokes, sex jokes, gay jokes, and said, look, he's homophobic, he's racist, he's everything else. So that happens. And a female employee at the West Side Comedy Theater calls the owners and goes, I'm uncomfortable with this. Now, I had run a show there called The Darkest Hour for 4 years at that point.
Wow.
From 2014 to 2018, I ran a show there that was an anything goes comedy show. And by the way, every lineup had people of color. Every lineup had women. So it wasn't like some white supremacy hour. And the owners of the club often performed on that show and watched me do every fucking joke I put on Twitter live and in person to audiences, usually with a good response, right? Never once did I have to get walked out of that club because somebody thought I was racist. I never had to, they never had to shut a show down, nothing like that, right? But they literally call me and go, we're canceling the show. And I go, why? And they go, you know, we just want to promote an environment that's diverse and inclusive of everybody. And I go, what about me or my show has ever not been diverse and inclusive of everybody? And rather than even answer that, it was almost like their lawyer was on the phone with Chris Gorbos. I'll say his name. With
you know
Chris
what? I have an issue with him too.
At the same, it was almost like they were on the phone. And he just kept repeating over and over again, we want a club that's diverse and inclusive. We want a club that's, and I go, Chris, are you not even going to have a fucking adult conversation with me about this? Like, so what you're telling me is that there really is no reason other than the fact that somebody at your club complained to you, and if you don't do something, you're worried about legal repercussions from this woman. But the reality is again, this is where business is backbone and they don't know the law. She can't sue the business for allowing me a public forum to perform. She can sue me if she thinks something I say is infringing on her rights or whatever, but she literally cannot sue the business.
They're more worried about popularity. I don't think they're actually worried about anything legal. I had the same issue.
They canceled the show. They canceled the show and banned me from the club, by the way. And so I went on, basically went on Facebook and was like, okay, so after 4 years, our show got canceled. Wow. By the way, they never fucking paid us for our show. We had an agreement in principle where we were supposed to get paid a set amount of money for every show, and more than that if we sold a certain amount of tickets. And never once did they ever pay me for that show. They paid me Sean before he left, not to discredit Sean. Sean paid me for the shows we did before he left West Side Comedy Theater. Chris and Mike and all the other guys at West Side never fucking paid me for 3 years for doing that show. And I never asked for money because we'd have a show up and it would be really good. We had a show down and it would be kind of shitty. But they never gave me a hard time about numbers. So I thought, when we get this show built to the point where it is doing consistent, strong numbers, then we'll all come to the table and we'll talk about what it's worth and how much money I should get paid. I'll wait until we get to a point where I feel like I deserve to ask for money. So I only bring that up to say, like, you took advantage of my kindness for 3 fucking years. I never asked for $1. I worked for you for free. And now you're going to cut my show and ban me from your club because some fucking intern that you also don't pay, who's got a pussy, doesn't feel comfortable with my material.
Sorry.
Bless you. So, and it's just, by the way, you think that's going to make the relationship between men and women in the comedy scene better? Fuck that noise.
Yeah, I'm not particularly fond of Mr. Grobos. I actually had to have a nice little conversation with him and his lawyer at the same time, with my lawyer on the phone as well, because he was going to cancel Killer Unicorns because he said a bunch of women. I'm like, what bunch of women? Whitney Cummings? Was it Whitney Cummings? Like, what were these important women? What women? Who are you talking about? The evil witches who sit behind their computers and don't have a life? You're going to cancel my show that brings, I don't know, 50 people into your fucking venue. You're going to cancel that, Mr. Grobos? No, you're not. And you know what? The show didn't get canceled, but he treated me like absolute shit.
After that.
During the show. He was so incredibly rude to me. I don't mind blasting him at all. And I don't do this, but he was, I'll keep it professional, but I've never been treated with such disrespect from anyone, like an owner. Chris Grobos. I don't even know how to pronounce it. I was so angry. Whatever. Globos. He is not a professional individual. I mean, he was so rude. He threw a check at me. He took a check and physically threw it and was like, thanks for the show. He was so angry and like, he was very aggressive. Like he made me feel physically uncomfortable when we did the show, which he agreed to with his lawyer. His lawyer's like, dude, you can't not have this show because 3 women that you don't know called and said Julia's a predator. Like this is in an appeals court. Like his lawyer had to break it down to him like he was mentally handicapped. Like Hello.
Yeah.
Like, it was terrible.
And to be honest, like, and the funny thing is people are like, well, if you think what they did is illegal, then sue them. It's like, they don't have any money.
Right.
Like,
They don't.
if I win a judgment against them, they're going to file bankruptcy and it's going to close that venue down.
Right.
And regardless of whether or not I'm in the right, then I'll be hated by every comedian because there's one less venue in the city.
Right.
I'm not trying to, unlike these fucking cunts, I'm not trying to ruin comedy for comedians.
I love you. I love you for it.
So as much as I disagree with that concept, it's like, that's fine. I don't need to do my show there. I took it to the Ice House and sold it the fuck out because it's a better club.
It is.
So, you know,
it's a much better club. I love the Ice House.
Yeah. And then everything closed like 2 months later.
Right. So. Well, I mean, I had just, I mean, there were a few really nice people, but in general, I've never been treated like garbage. And it was like when I walked in there, I mean, it was almost like he had told the entire staff to treat me like shit. I was in shock. But I kept it professional. We packed the house. I mean, packed. And I think it was a sold out show. And we had an incredible lineup. We always had incredible lineups.
Listen, I don't have delusions of grandeur about our show. We had nights where we had 5 people in the audience, but we had nights where we had nights where we sold the fucker out too.
That's normal. Yeah. To have the ups and the downs. I mean, Killer Unicorns, that's the show I produce, if anyone, which has been going since 2016. Had ups and downs too, depending on the venue. You know what I mean? We were at Nerd Melt, and Nerd Melt, let's be honest, was the creme de la creme of indie stuff for a while till it shut it down.
Yeah.
And we were there, and we had Best Selling, and we had we had all the people, and we had great names, but it was, things changed. It became the Ruby, which I'd never cared for. And then the Ruby obviously believed Jen because she was working for something they were doing, some internship. I don't know. There was always some bizarre, creepy, quirky thing she had connected with that venue. I didn't much care for the venue because I felt it was kind of a divisive and what do you mean it's a place for gay comedian? Why can't we just be comedians? We're fucking human beings.
Right. Well, and also like, by nature of what comedy is, like everybody's got some shit going on that makes them
Why are we
comedian.
Why is it we're a gay comedian? You're a female comedian. No, I'm not. Don't even call me a female comedian. I'm a motherfucking comedian.
That's the problem with the that's the problem I have with the segregation of lineups that's happening now in the name of wokeness is like, what's her name? Marcela Aguelo has a show on Wednesday nights that's like
Women Crush Wednesday.
Yeah, Women Crush Wednesday.
Yeah.
And she was like, we'll never have a man on this show ever. And I go like, that's not a feather in your cap. Like the best shows I've ever been on are ones that are the actual lineup of the show is super diverse and different. And I don't mean diverse in terms of like just color or gender. I mean diverse in that you got a guy who does impressions. You got a super dark one-liner comic. You got somebody who's a storyteller. You've got like those shows are just better shows.
You should check out some of our lineups. I think you would like it. Some of them are just great. Because we have those different kinds of, like we had, what one of the girls, she was on a TV show, but she was a great storyteller. Brittany, she's blonde. What was her last name? This is terrible. She's like a famous person, but it's just, I produce so many shows. It leaves my head, but she was a great story. I mean, she was phenomenal to watch. And I even tried to, instead of it just being comedian, I like to put in some storytellers here and there, so people would get to have a different taste of stuff.
Well, we tried to do that with The Darkest Hour as well, where we would have people that weren't comedians come in and tell like a super dark story that like influenced their career.
I love that. That's interesting.
Which eventually became this podcast. So,
oh, wow.
This podcast started from the live show of saying we want to have anything goes. And then I said, well, I also want people to tell like dark personal stories. And then, it just sort of became this thing of like, almost like a behind the joke in some cases. The first episode of this podcast was comedian Jen Murray talking about her, her father committing suicide and how it led to, she has a great like 5-minute bit on it. And wanting to hear the story of the actual events and how it led to making a joke about it and how you get to that point as a comedian of taking something that would maybe crush another person and finding a way to laugh at it. So, you know, which is kind of cool about this conversation because it's heavy and we're talking about heavy shit and legal shit. But, you know, for the most part, you can tell you still have a pretty good sense of humor about everything.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I do, you know, I do now. I'll be honest.
I agree, but I agree with what you're saying and probably about to say is like, I just, before you say, I want to say, same for me. When I was going through it, I literally was like, on the verge of suicide because you feel like you're surrounded on all sides. You literally feel the walls closing in and you go, what the fuck am I ever going to do again in my life? Like, and you feel like it's everybody. And then the best advice I got in that time was like, go outside, get off the fucking internet and interact with other people. And the real harsh reality, the part where you laugh at yourself is when you go, wait a minute. 99% of the world doesn't even know who the fuck I am. So what is this little thing? It feels like everybody, but it's really not.
It does. Yep. I think at the time I remember having a lot of like body sensations when I was going through the defamation. Cause you know, she was running around with this piece of paper before we get to the appeal, which that part's easy, but she was just running around, you know, because again, she was, if you look at it from a psychological standpoint, clearly very angry that I told the truth, that I made this post. And she was lucky enough to hook up with a mentally ill commissioner. He wasn't a judge. And he himself, like, I am the law today. That's no such thing. It's the law and not the law.
What are you, Judge Dredd?
Right. There's not like, hey, dude, we're not in, what is it? Freaking that HBO show that like, I don't know, some King show. Like you're not the law. The law is the law. So it happens though. People, you know, it's ironic that I shouldn't use the word ironic, maybe duplicitous is a better word, but these people who claim, you know, defund the police and fuck Trump and the government, these are the same people that believe this lunatic who granted her the order. They're like, no, Julia won the appeal. Doesn't matter. Jen had the order in the first place, and a word from another girl that she was doesn't matter.
Right.
Doesn't matter. You guys have to, you know, the thing is that people just have to start using their brains, because what we ended up doing is we ended up finding, so we went through some trials and tribulations. I mean, there were times when I was running, and I'll never forget, literally in the streets, with my case in my hands, like the folder, running in the rain to lawyers' offices, crying. I mean, 2019 wasn't my year. We'll just say that. You know, I do want people to know, you know, I got down to like 80 pounds. I didn't know how to trust. I had to be on
my birth weight.
I had to be on a strong amount of sedatives, you know, fantasizing about walking into traffic, stuff I normally wouldn't do, started coming to me, and I started to pray. And I know that might sound odd because personally, I'm not a very religious person. I'm more spiritual, always have been, a universe energy, all this. But I started to pray. I was living in this random, just little teeny tiny back house for March because I was essentially homeless. I couldn't get a nannying job because there's a domestic violence restraining order. So I had no money. My parents had to pay my rent. I mean, people thought I was okay on Instagram. I was not okay at all at that time.
Well, and that was the difficult thing with my situation, and I still experience this. Like people look at the fact that I had a television show, and for some reason there are people that just the default in their mind go like, well, I'm sure he's got a couple $1 million. No. I made $96,000 to do 3 seasons of my television show. That money lasted a year and a half. Like, it paid my bills for a year and a half. That was it. And so when all this shit happened, it was like, yo, I don't have other means for income, you know, and more of the fallout, more of the economic fallout was actually it was a year after, and actually 2019 when I had decided to go back and get a corporate job, and I had moved a bunch of bills and stuff around and said, listen, okay, as soon as I get paid my first check from this new job, I can get things right. And then, you know, a year into this, I can rebound financially and get myself set up for the future so that the only comedy I'm doing is stuff that I'm producing myself. I can spend marketing money on building my own fan base and just kind of do my own thing as a comedian and not really need to like work through the industry or play the game. And I got fired from that job on day 2 because of the canceling from 2018. Okay. and a girl had reported to HR that she was uncomfortable working at the company if I were there because of what the internet said about what they thought I meant a year prior. And so that rug got pulled out a year later. And then that was actually what was financially devastating. And it was to the point where it was to the point where I was like, fuck, we put all our eggs in this basket. And now this basket just got thrown over a bridge. And so I had to do a GoFundMe to just get our bills paid, to get our rent paid. Like, I don't have family members that have the kind of money to just take care of our bills for a month. Yeah. So I was lucky that I had two very good friends in the entertainment industry who stepped up and were like, here's some money, pay it back when you can. You know, you know, if you're ever in a position to help somebody else this way, you know, I think you would do the same thing, etc. So if it weren't for like good relationships that I built with them and good relationships I've built with fans and friends over the years that also stepped up and contributed a little bit of money in aggregate, got us through those couple of months until I could, you know, we had a car repossessed, so I had to go get a new car to even be able to go Uber drive or do anything like that. So, you know, it was a pretty devastating reality as a result of literally people not liking something you do artistically that has nothing to do with your job. Yeah.
Yeah, that's, you know, I'm so sorry that happened. And I know people are like, it's not your fault and I'm okay and da-da-da. But I really,
but in that moment, like in that moment, you do start going through and going, well, I have a $250,000 life insurance policy on me. Would it be easier for me to kill myself and at least take care of the people that I love than it would be to fight through this and try to figure out how to claw out of it? And so, you know, like those are real thoughts that people have when they go through this shit. And it's like, and not only do I used to think that like the media doesn't believe in that. Not only do I think they believe it and know it, I think they fucking want it. I look at what they're doing to like a guy like Chris D'Elia right now and I go, they want this guy to fucking kill himself.
It's really sick. Actually,
they're trying to make him kill himself.
I don't know if he's okay. I haven't seen anything from him on social media.
And by the way, I don't know this guy, and the little bit I do know about him, I didn't like him. We had some offhand interactions in passing that you have with certain comedians where you're just like, fuck that guy. And he's like, fuck that guy.
He seems I don't know.
He's a little bit of a dick, but it's like, it's fucking crazy. We live in a time where somebody like me who doesn't care for Chris D'Elia at all has to go, this is fucked up and you're trying to make this guy kill himself. And it's not cool.
I just don't think it's okay, this whole calling out, because here's the thing, like, you know, it got so rampant. You know, some lunatic attacked me this summer that had nothing to do with the Jen thing, but decided that it was a good idea to defame me again.
Well, and then this is the other thing that people don't realize is then what happens is people want to come at the king. And what I mean by that is comics that are farther down the pecking order from you think they're going to make a name off of coming for you now. I'm going to go after Julia Pels. And I know what you're talking about. It's the Twitter account.
Yeah.
The anonymous, anonymous Twitter account that happens to mostly talk about her ex-boyfriend. Got it. But you know, this is
it the cancel these predators?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and it's clearly run by a very specific, also mentally ill female comedian in LA, because 90% of it was her talking about her ex. And, you know, it's just like, it's obvious who these people are, but they literally think that they're going to build enough social capital by participating in this cancel culture shit, that it's somehow going to elevate them beyond where their talent can take them. And I would say that that's a joke if it weren't working. It's working for them.
I think it's ridiculous. The account that they made is, to me, it's funny. I'm proud to be on a list with Brian Callen. I think Brian Callen is fabulous.
I mean,
good. You're making me more famous than I am. Thank you.
Yeah. I don't know
who runs the account, but it was Theo Manhattan, now Savannah Manhattan, transgender. We had worked together on Killer Unicorns very copacetically. And he, they, whatever, he, she, they, I'm not sure. I don't follow him. I don't know what he has or hasn't become.
Sure.
But he was the one who started like the defamation with the racist text that they made up, which again can't be proven. I'm a person who talks about my mistakes. I've been arrested. I talk about it on stage. I talk about a lot of things.
That's an interesting thing because I want to talk about that a little bit because comedians.
But I think it's funny when people try to, what I was going to say is I think it's funny when people try to make something up about you. I've asked so many black men for their sperm because I want a baby that no one's going to believe I'm a racist. Like, so many guys were like, yeah, we maybe could believe this, but Julia's asked for our sperm like 800 times. You know what I mean? Like, if I was like genuinely racist, not that someone couldn't want a black man's sperm and still be racist. I guess they could. But like, why would I go out of my way to flirt with black comedians, which I'm known to do?
It's not
I'm known. You know what I'm saying?
Sperm not known for its flavor.
Right. Like, I mean,
nor is any sperm, by the way.
No, I've literally, I mean, and that might sound weird, but it's one of those things where it's like, look, if you're going to make something up, make sure it could kind of be true.
Yeah.
And I've never been racially off.
And by the way, if there's one black person in this chat right now who's watching this episode, you're about to get 500 direct messages. Hey, girl, you need that sperm. I got you.
Right.
But anyway, what I was going to say about that is the thing that bothers me the most about this is I feel like you and another comic I feel like this happened to is a young guy, open micer named Nick Romero, who's a friend of mine. And one of the unfortunate circumstances with Nick is part of Nick's act is talking very publicly about his domestic violence situation, that he had a drug problem, he had a drinking problem, and that he and an ex-girlfriend of his had gotten physical with each other and things escalated and it was the biggest mistake of his life and it's what got him clean and sober. And so here's a guy who's trying to take, again, as somebody who loves dark comedy and real shit, here's a guy who tried to take this horrible thing in his life, put it into a comedy act and talk about it. And now women in are using that as an excuse to say, well, obviously if he's got a record, he's abused anyone who's ever accused him. So anyone who's ever accused Nick is now, we believe them 100% because he has a history, has a criminal record. And it's like, are you out of your fucking mind? Meanwhile, when a guy like George Floyd gets snuffed out and people go, well, he had a record. You go, that doesn't matter. That shouldn't matter, right? You don't get to kill a guy because he has a record. But if it's a straight white dude in a comedy scene who has a domestic violence charge, he's fair game. He's totally fair game. You can accuse him of anything. Everyone has to believe it. It's like, yo, if this guy was so, and this is what bothers me, and it's like you're literally taking somebody's vulnerability and weaponizing it against them. It's not like the kid hid that he had a domestic violence case. He talks about it. He makes fun of himself about it. He talks about how fucked up he was. He talks about having to get clean and sober. He's going to meetings. And instead of being what's the word I'm looking for? Compassionate and really inclusive. You weaponize that vulnerable, unfortunate thing in his past against him. And now you're going to call him a predator in everything he does for the rest of his life.
Absolutely, because you know what? That's exactly what mental illness is. Because if they had any faith, if they had any idea who they were, they first of all would not go after someone's life. No mentally sane person makes up a Twitter account, cancel these predators.
Anonymous, by the way, anonymous to prohibit being sued for defamation. That's the reason.
Right. Anonymous.
They do it anonymously because then they can't be sued for defamation.
No, it's called held accountable for their actions.
Right, exactly.
Because they can't take responsibility for their actions in their lives because they are mentally ill. And so what they do is they project their trauma onto me via Twitter. And so that's why I don't engage in Twitter, because it's for mentally ill people.
Very true. By the way, follow me on Twitter, everybody, at Josh Denny on Twitter. It is for mentally ill people. I love it. I'm very good at it.
But you get what I'm saying? Like the fact that there's some racist nonsense or cancel that I'm on some predator list. Like I don't have a record. Look, I've been to court more than once, and my wins are 1-1, win and win. So. You know, I don't know. My lawyer laughs and she's like, yeah, get online and tell them you're 0 for 2, motherfuckers. My lawyer is a spitfire and I love her.
But I mean, but my lawyers have been the same way. And I've made friends with really good ones through all this stuff.
Me too. Yeah.
You know, ultimately, I feel like, you know, people like us are going to have to get involved in sort of legislatively reforming the way the shit works in our country. Because
that needs to be taken down. I mean, I'm livid. I'm livid about the Facebook, the rape list. I'm livid about well,
there's a list of racist comedians in New York.
I'm sure I'm in it.
Yeah.
I'm sure I'm on it too.
You know, there was a list of, it was like, here are racist comedians. And it's like, yo, you fucking idiots. This is what bothers me. It's like, before I had a TV show, do you not understand that I started in all black comedy clubs, that I opened for black comics, and that black comics opened for me almost exclusively for the first 3 years I was a comedian? Like I made my fucking I made my career in black comedy clubs. If I were racist, I don't think I would have gotten very far. So,
mentally ill.
You know, it's just insane and when I say gotten very far, I don't mean like my career is huge now. I mean, I don't think I would have walked out of those places alive if I was the white supremacist that you think I'm that you're claiming me to be, right? And it's just so crazy to me that, you know, we're in this world now where nobody on the outside looking in is looking at this going, well, this potentially is problematic. Like this could come to me. So, you know, until it does, and then they go, well, wait a minute, what about due process? It's like, where you didn't care about due process. Where were you then? Yeah. You didn't care about due process with Chris Hardwick,
here's the thing. They're going to eat here's the thing about these groups, because this is like gang members, okay? The women, you know, making up fake rape lists and going along with, you know, Ms. Curcio's nonsense or Mr. Manhattan's bullshit. It's mentally ill. And the fact of the matter is that they're going to come after each other and they're going to eat each other. Yeah. So am I worried about the people out there, you know, who are doing evil? No, because you know what ends up happening? They end up shooting themselves in the face before I even have time to call my lawyer to sue their asses.
Yeah, it's very true.
They're dumb. They're not. Here's why. And I'm going to say it from a psychological standpoint. People who are mentally ill, there's misfirings, right? Very impulsive. Get on the thing, talking about, and none of it's the truth. And when you're lying, your brain circuitry is all getting messed up, right? Because you're not telling the truth.
They're also pandering to the wrong market. And what I mean by that is they're positioning themselves in the comedy community to appeal to the other comedians. Because in their mind, the economy of how they get ahead is by other comedians liking them. And the reality is, the real economy of becoming a comedian is building your own audience and fan base. Correct. And what they don't realize is those woke opinions that will band you together with other comedians and get you booked on comic book store shows and other things in the local scene. Yeah, you'll get up 10 nights a week and nobody will care and nobody will come and nobody will buy anything from you because your point of view fucking sucks. It's not sellable. It's not marketable.
They're not funny.
So you're either not funny, or more importantly and devastating to comedians is a lot of them just aren't interesting. They might be very funny, but we don't live in a time where funny is enough anymore. You got to be a funny person, and you've got to be interesting enough that people want to listen to your podcast. They want to follow you on social media. They want to see what you're up to in your day-to-day life, because if you don't win in all of those things, there are just too many other people out there that are good at all of it. There are funny people that are also great on Instagram, that are also great on Twitter, that are great in their YouTube vlogs. And if you're not somebody who can, like Tim Dillon's a great example. Tim is fucking interesting and funny everywhere. And people that like Tim Dillon doesn't make $1 million a year on Patreon now because he's just funny. It's because he's interesting enough that people follow him everywhere he goes. The people that like his show watch him guest on other people's shows. They watch him on everything that he does.
Yeah, and I can tell you why. I'll tell you why. People are so hungry for the truth right now.
Yes.
And what does Tim Dillon do?
Just delivers the truth 24/7. Yeah.
That's it. So that's why people are so glued, because the truth is this woke culture is not actually the average person's reality. This is our reality here in Hollywood, but it's not. And like you and I very much could get canceled for anything, which is why my shit's private right now, which is why I'm not engaging very much, because it's stupid. For what? For me to get into some argument with a bunch of lunatics, again, mentally ill people.
Yeah.
like, and cause myself,
or if you're me, Don Cheadle, but yeah, okay.
you know, or get fired. Like, you know, my agents could drop me for saying the wrong thing. It's like, why?
Well, I've already done all that. And I got to tell you, I have very much a Fight Club mentality now about the idea of being dropped and people in Hollywood not working with me. And I mean that part of Fight Club where he famously says, it's not until we lose everything until then that we're free to do anything.
Well, I feel like
I butchered that quote. But
no, I know what you're saying. You know,
it's
I was
this
lucky.
concept of hitting bottom before you can do something that's really great and meaningful.
Yep.
And so I feel like the hitting bottom part has already happened for me. And now the doors are open for me to just try to do something that's truly great or meaningful. And I don't think I've done it yet. And I don't know what that's going to be, but I know that I can. And I know that I'm going to try.
Yeah. So we decided, so we can finish. We decided to listen to this one defense attorney who I still love. He's adorable and he's a great lawyer. He's like a super lawyer. And he said, look, I've read your case. What's happening is fucked. He said, but I'm a defense, like he's a trial lawyer. He's like, I'm not an appellate. Like appellate attorneys, they're a specific kind of attorney. And he's like, you need to go to this woman. She read your case. She knows you're right. Go to her. And I did. And she sent me an article about Blancart being one of his decisions being overturned, literally before I even hired her. And she said, is this the guy you're talking about? And I forwarded it to my dad and I'm like, okay. And my aunt, it was my dad and my dad's sister that funded this whole situation, which was the appeal. And we had a very short amount of time to decide. So it was, are we just going to accept this or are we going to fight this? And we weighed our options as a family. We weighed our options individually. We thought about it. We slept on it. We talked to the lawyer. You know, everything was via telephone. They couldn't afford to fly out here. You know, everything was through the phone. And my dad said, okay, you know, your aunt and I are going to get the money together and we're going to make payments and you're going to need to be strong because the only thing I can do is get you a lawyer. You're going to have to do the rest.
Yeah.
Which means fight, you know, not give up, not run away, not hide, try to keep Kill Unicorns going, which I was trying to do. And Mr. Grobos was so lovely to me at his wonderful theater. You know, it's like
I love that you mispronounce his name, and I'm not going to correct it. I'm not going to correct it. No, it's great.
Oh, it was wrong. Oh, perfect.
No, but he doesn't deserve to have it pronounced correctly. That's what's great about it. So, fuck
no, I never knew it. So you know, like my dad was like, "Look, I will figure out that this shouldn't be," because my dad's the kind of guy that's like, if you fuck up, you're going to rot in jail. Right. But if you didn't, I'll help fight for you if I can. Sure. If I can.
You mean your dad's a rational person?
Right. And we get along? There's no such thing.
Yeah.
No, we're like besties. It's cute. In fact, I'm looking at a card right now that says Happy Valentine's Day to my daughter, Julia, whom I love. My guy.
Yeah.
So we get the attorney. Appeals take 1.5 years. It's just what they are. But not 1.5 years, like more like a year. And because of COVID, ours got delayed more, but it'll take at least 1 year.
Yeah.
And I was, we went to the appeal and it was quite sobering, not for me. You know, I was prepared. I had a very good attorney. I was very well protected. I was very much in the right. We were in an actual, you know, normal courtroom. I don't know if you've ever been to the other shitty Stanley Mosque fucking family courthouse, but it's a piece of shit. An appeals court is literally...
I think that's the only one in LA I haven't been to.
It's a piece of shit.
But I've been to all the other ones.
So the appeals court is beautiful. I mean, it's just huge. They have this gavel and they come out with the robes and you're just like, holy fuck, I wouldn't want to be not prepared in this. And Curcio looked a hot mess. She was just the acne and the overweight, and people could criticize this, but I'm like, the lie has caught up to you physically. You didn't look like this when this shit started. She literally looked like she was crumbling before us. So that was, to me, I'm not going to use the word satisfying because that's evil, but that to me was like, okay, you know, your evil is getting the best of you at this point. She, you know, my father kept repeating, time is not on her side, and it wasn't. So we went ahead with the case and we finished up, and my lawyer, you know, took me out. We went out to eat with my girlfriend at the time. And again, throughout all of this, I've had girlfriends, but you know,
which is a whole other layer.
Well, it's just funny because, you know, I'm such an abuser, but so we went out and I said, so what do you think? Do you think we want? And she said, you know, I've never had a case like this, because she's used to defending murderers, you know, and right. And like people who, you know, appeals, that's some serious business, appeals. And, you know, 95% of them get thrown out, let alone looked at. And we won across the board. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I'll never forget. I'll get to my point. So, you know, she did help me with the canceling for some of the stuff. Some of it, you know, like Flappers called me. They were going to pay me to do Killer Unicorns, but they got phone calls and emails from the Facebook group, you know, the gang members saying that I was a whatever. I don't even know. They would not divulge to me what was even said. Flappers didn't ban me, but they said they couldn't work with me and do the show because it was going to be a paid, you know, they were going to pay me to run my show. It was a great show. And my lawyer would continuously jump in and call the theaters and defend me and be like, you don't even get it. This is an appeal. This girl's a liar. Let me show you evidence. Like she went above and beyond her job. So by the time, you know, shit kind of stuff started to settle around April of 2019, even though the shit hit the fan, you know, at the beginning of the year, it started to settle. And, you know, we got through it. And so we waited, you know, and finally I'm sitting at a coffee shop and it was about the time when we'd find out about the appeal. And my lawyer called and, you know, it says badass. That's what I named her on my phone. Mm-hmm. And I answered it and I said, what's up, Susan? And she said, do you have a minute? And I was like, did the opinion come down? Like, that's what it's called, the opinion.
Right.
So I fly out of the coffee. She's like, it did. So I fly out of the coffee like a lunatic. And I said, tell me, just tell me. And she said, we won on all counts. It was a unanimous decision. I fell to my knees, literally. It was not drama. It was very unexpected. I cried. She said, you're free. It's over. You won. You're free. You're free. You're free. And it was that moment in The Pursuit of Happiness when he's just clapping above his head.
Yeah.
Where he's crying and he's
iconic scene.
I mean, people were stopping on the street and staring. It was pretty epic and weird, but that was it. And
The Pursuit of Happiness, my favorite Terrence Howard film. Anyway.
It got taken, you know, it's off my record. It's like it never happened. We won. So that's the story. And in terms of the other things, people who've banned me or shut me down or asked me for interviews, like I had this indie, I'm not going to name their name. I don't love blasting people, but they asked to do an interview with me and then like turned around. They asked me to do it twice. I wrote out the interview and canceled it. It was just like, oh my God, just leave me alone then. Like, Why do you guys do this? Or like people will invite me to do their show and then cancel me. I'm like, you're mentally handicapped. I don't know what else to say. Like,
yeah, that's the one downside of our business is that it is really comprised of a lot of not professional people who don't have their shit together.
Yeah. You know? Yeah. Thank you that's kind of what I wanted to say. It's not, you know, like they're just not professional.
You know, it's like, it's one thing if it's like you're being asked to do something outside of the scope of your capabilities. Right. You know, like if somebody's like, yeah, go create an ad set for this show. And you're like, I don't know anything about digital marketing. Obviously that's different, but I'm talking about people that like don't respect other people's times. Yeah. Don't, you know, show up late to things. Yeah. You know, don't fucking communicate well, you know, and it's just, there is a ton of those people that are very, you know, operationally discourteous, and that never gets called out, and nobody has a problem with that, but they'll be very quick to be like, this is what we think is appropriate. And by the way, like, I never, like I said in the beginning of this episode, I never got into comedy to be appropriate.
I don't think
You know,
that's
like,
what comedy's for.
what
I don't
the
think
fuck
that's
is
what
this
comedy
thing
is
about?
for.
Yeah, it's like, that's a TED
Comedy
Talk.
is not to be politically correct. We're not
No.
therapists. Comedy is to bring up, in my in my professional opinion, I sound like Joe Biden stuttering. In my opinion, my humblest opinion, comedy is the best way to bring up uncomfortable subjects such as race issues, rape, defamation, suicide, breakups. These are things that we all have in common. And,
Well,
and to be able to bring it to light and to make it something that's funny, to me, if you're good, that's a great comedian. I don't give a shit if it makes you uncomfortable.
And you've got to understand that, like, if I'm making a joke about a racist thought that I have, right? I'm not making that joke on stage in front of other people for the purposes of gaining support for that opinion. I'm more than likely, and I would guess anyone that's making any of jokes that are sexist or racist or homophobic to the naked eye is making that to relate to other people who've had those thoughts and to share in the humiliation of that crossing your mind, even against your better judgment or your better predisposition. And so it's like you're doing something to sort of unite people over a shared experience of discomfort. For someone to stand outside of that and go, this is objectively racist or sexist or homophobic with the intention of hurting, you got to be fucking retarded to think that. And quite frankly, like, I've lost the interest in winning those people over because they're too stupid to be customers of mine. You're too fucking dumb to participate in what I do. End of story.
Well, see, and that's how I feel about the indie community. Like, y'all have been around
too fucking dumb.
They've been around for 15 years. You know what they're doing? Nothing. What? You've been on TV a few times, and where's all your money? Where's all your success? It doesn't exist. Why? Because they're in it for ego. They're in it for attention. They're in it for the wrong reasons. You don't get into comedy to soothe your fucked up ego. You go to therapy for that. Don't get me started. Because you know what? Here's the thing. I don't do unpaid shows anymore. I don't care that I'm not the most uber pop. I don't, unless it's for a producer that I'm very close with. Do you know what I mean?
I'm not going to put myself. This is the point, though. If it is a free show, I will do it for free. If you're charging admission,
correct,
you better be paying the people that are actually performing.
Correct.
It's very simple.
Exactly. There better not be any of this. Exactly. I'm not doing
when I did The Darkest Hour at the Ice House. The show made a few $100, right? And I had like 10 comedians on the list.
That's great.
So we subtracted the cost of marketing the show out, which was like $100. And then we literally split the remaining money equally amongst all of the comedians for their performance time. Everybody did roughly 10 minutes. Everybody got the same money. It was like $13 or something ridiculous like that. But my point is, everyone got an equal percentage, and I've always paid comedians that tour with me or whatever based off the percentage of the show that they perform. So if the show is a 90-minute show and they do 30 minutes, they get a third of the money. If they do 20 minutes, they get whatever that math is. I'm not in a position to do math, but you know my point is, like, and the host gets whatever their percentage of time is. It's like that to me is what's fair and economic. This idea that comedians are like, I'll charge and then you'll perform for free and then you won't get paid, but I'll make money. What the fuck is that? So, you know,
mental illness.
Not to go. Yeah, no, it is.
Mental illness.
Well,
we're back to the mental illness.
It's somebody that thinks that they figured out an angle for themselves. And that's ultimately, that's all that cancel culture is like shitty people. The untalented thinking that they found an angle for themselves.
Exactly. I mean, here's the thing. Anybody who has to go after someone, anybody who feels the need, and this is why I said at the beginning, I don't agree with the way that I did it, because I don't agree with going after people. But you made a good point. You went to the town hall. I get it.
Right.
And I appreciate it, because that actually is very articulate, because I normally don't participate in those kinds of drama, nonsensical. It's mentally ill.
Yeah.
But I just think that it is disgusting. You know, look at Johnny Depp. I mean,
oh, yeah.
I'm literally, I've done, look, anybody who wants to come after me about that, I'll go toe to toe, because I stayed up and I did the research. I mean, there was a night that, I'm not kidding you, I was up till 4 a.m. listening to the depositions, watching her body language, listening to his crazy shit, listening to them together. I mean, do I think he's sane? And no, he never has been completely out. But do I think that he was the perpetrator in that? Absolutely not.
You'd have to be blinded by gender role to think that he's the perpetrator.
You do realize that he's been canceled from everything again.
Of course,
and she's still going.
Yeah, and by the way, she claimed that she was going to donate the money that he gave her in a settlement to some fucking. She never donated that money.
I bet. I'm sure she did.
They proved it. People on the internet found it, and they were like, "She's never made a donation in that amount to anybody, because that amount would have had to been declared on the charity's taxes that year, and it never was." So, you know, it's
doesn't
dark.
Surprise me.
It's a dark reality, but you know, the thing that I'm most happy about, it seems like with you, is that you're continuing to forge ahead. You're not backing down from telling your story. And I'm glad you took time to come on the show and tell it tonight, because I think it's important that people know that this, you know, a lot of these times I talk about things like cancel culture and stuff. People go, "Oh, are the straight white men not wanting to be held accountable for their shittiness?" It's like, man, this is not just happening to straight white men. It's happening to gay women too, man. And
and you know what? If someone ever said to me, you know, like, are you not holding yourself? Anyone that knows me, anyone that actually knows me, knows that I'll be the first person to talk about my own shit.
Yeah.
You know, like you said, even like being arrested in Chicago for doing nothing. But I talk about it because that's the law. The law is in Chicago. Whoever calls the cops first, the other fuck gets taken in. Why? It's a liability. If they make a judgment call and leave, and I shoot her or she shoots me, the parents could sue. The family could sue. You
lesbians are fucking wild.
Oh yeah. Just, you know, I'm just raping and racing all over the place, you know? The point is, yeah, I mean, and that's something, again, I was arrested. I was dragged into court by a lunatic. She was angry. I was fucking another girl. That's the reality. The reality wasn't, you know, they took pictures of us that night. And you know who had the scratches on her? Not her. The one who went to jail. Me. The one who was working. Me. I've got the receipts of being at nannying. I've got the receipts of her being drunk with our neighbor because she was an alcoholic. I have the receipts of the cop testifying against her, saying Miss Carr looked insane and Miss Pels was smoking a cigarette with scratches all over her arms, crying at her kitchen table.
I mean,
when we arrested her.
It's just, my brain turned off halfway through because it just sounds like you're describing Chicago to me.
Well, you know what I'm saying? It's just like, this is like, this
isn't a thing. This is Chicago.
But it happens.
People are in Chicago.
People, you know, and people will deny it. They'll be like, no, she's a violent. It's a violent. No. People are mentally ill. It doesn't matter if they have a vagina.
Yeah, it's so funny to me that
unbelievable.
You know, this is the other thing too, is the levels that people will go to sort of like gaslight you about your experiences or the things you've gone through. You know, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Oh yeah. Oh, and you know, I think they thrive off of making people hurt. You know, like a lot of them like will use language like, "I'm a kind cunt," and it's like, no, you're not. You're exactly what you say you are. Yeah. and you probably know who I'm talking about. You know, like, you're not a kind cunt. You're malevolent. You're mentally ill, and it's not my job to take care of your emotional disabilities. It's yours. And that's how I feel about those people. Yeah,
there's a very good
mentally disabled. Literally. Yeah. I mean, there's no other word for women who are willing to run around and do this to, you know, people all the time, friends, lovers, whoever. I mean, there's girls who had nothing to do with Curcio and I that will literally go to bat for this woman and be like, "Oh yeah, Julia's a perpetrator." It's like, you don't even know who I am. How dare you?
Yeah.
Shame on you.
Well, you know,
who raised you?
Yeah. And it's like, it's kind of, you know, again, I don't think enough of these people get sued or held responsible for their shitty, wrongful accusations either. I mean, that's just the sad truth of it.
Right.
is that, you can basically call people whatever you want,
Sure. Yeah.
on Twitter, on the internet or whatever. And for the most part, there's really no recourse. I mean, and what's going to happen though, and this is
What are your thoughts? Because, I hope.
This is my bold prediction of what's going to happen is that, somebody's going to get murdered because somebody lied about them on the internet.
Yeah.
And then what's going to happen is a company like YouTube or Twitter or Facebook is not going to they're not going to win on we're a platform, not a publisher. So we're not responsible for. They're going to get taken out. They're going to get sued in a wrongful death case, and they're going to lose everything. Please keep putting that out in the universe because, cancel these predators. I'd love for that to just disappear. Well, but that's my point is these people, they go. This is just insane. They go through this whole cancel thing without recourse. And then what's going to happen is they're going to fuck up somebody's livelihood. They're going to, and then that person's going to they're going to hit bottom and they're not going to have a father or mother like yours or friends in the industry like I had. They're going to have nothing. Right. And they're going to take a gun and they're going to go into a building and they're going to kill a lot of people. Yep. No, you're right. You're right. And so ultimately it's like, that's the sad reality is that's what's going to have to happen before this goes away, but that's going to have to happen before this goes away. No, you're right. And I do believe that these things will crash out. Like Zuckerberg has been in so many, I can't stomach him, by the way. He's been in so many lawsuits at this point. I'm just waiting for him to croak. Facebook will die off. Instagram will go. I'm not involved in TikTok at all or any of that shit. So I'm pretty, and in terms of the comedy, I'm working on a project that no one knows about. And you're the first person that I'm telling. And it's something that is different than people will expect. And I have a couple producers that are helping me with it. They're helping me with marketing and the branding and all that stuff. And so I don't know if I'll ever make all my profiles or any of my profiles public again, per se. We'll see, if something really blows up and I have to, fine. But I think this next project might be enough for building more of a fan base without having to do it via social media, and then if they want to, like, I'll make a new Instagram where it doesn't have to be, I don't know. I haven't decided, but like, I'm working on something that I feel like has been a long time coming and was interrupted by the defamation. And now because of it has gotten even better, if that makes sense. And I'm really excited about the project. I've never felt better. I've definitely pulled back from comedy, but I knew that I needed time to heal, and mentally well people know when it's time to step back and know when it's time to take that break and not push and not engage. And in this time, I've not only regained parts of myself, I mean, I'm just such a better person for it, truly am. That's not just, a line. And it's made my art so much better. It was so much more authentic and so much